Hey, it's Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox. You know, sometimes in this YouTube pondscape of ours, it can be exciting to see one of our own little ponds highlight something we hold dear to ourselves. Which is why when a certain big fish of a citric persuasion in our little challenge run pond showed a mild interest in one of my favorite Souls-likes, The Surge, which only got replaced as my top non-FromSoft game in the genre by Lies of P about 2 years ago. I was rather excited to see this game get some of the acknowledgement it deserves. While the second game is certainly the better of the two, the original The Surge is still a great showcase of an outside developer tackling Souls-style combat, falling closer to Bloodborne than traditional Dark or Demon Souls, which I'm sure influences my reasoning for loving this game and wanting to see it get some recognition. However, after a long wait to watch others get a quality run out of the game, it became obvious that sitting around and waiting for the bigger fish to tackle the Surge is the coward's way out. Fine. I'll do it myself. To start, we need to get through the cold open in this atmospheric horror scene that kind of makes no sense. Like, yeah, Company Evil, but has the big actual Surge happened already? And that's why this goes so poorly for Warren? Because if that's the case, then this man has no sense of luck at all. Speaking of no luck, I decided to play this on PS5, and this game is really not optimized for the current generation of consoles. There's already plenty of jank, but some of the bugs we find on PS5 are pretty bad. Like, I had to fully readjust the gamma settings, otherwise I would have been stuck in a perpetual state of a strange blue screen effect. We'll skip over most of the bugs from here on, unless they get particularly egregious. Anyway, once we're through all of that, and we get into the main thrust of the run, we are given our weapon for the evening, or morning, depending on when you clicked on the video. The pipe, or the reclaimed piston, and we can test it out against some drones. It works pretty well, but there's nothing out of the ordinary on using the piston against these guys. To understand exactly how fucked we are with this weapon, we'll need to make our way through to the first real enemies, and showcase the single best thing about the Surge, the ability to dismember foes. And this dismemberment isn't only gratuity for its own sake, it has a few benefits for combat, as it allows us to target non-armored limbs to kill enemies quickly, or more importantly, we can specifically target armored limbs or an enemy's weapon arm in order to get upgrade materials for that type of armor piece or that weapon. Cutting off the weapon hand also lets us swap out for new weapons, which is where this immediately diverges from any other run I've ever done. Because I absolutely love these single-rigged weapons, the giant greatsword-coated tools that these hunched-over dudes swing around wildly. But now we get to skip right through the obvious upgrade and go make some mistakes for like 2 hours. Yeah, we've got a couple of things to do before heading to the first boss of the tutorial area. First is farming this guy in the spacesuit for his armor, which is absolutely not worth the effort, but it was new DLC gear I'd never used before, so I was curious. And on the topic of armor, we also kill the smelter for the shining coin. Not important now, but it will be important that we've gotten it at some point. Moving on to fight Pax, and no, not the Telemanus or Augustus ones. This one is an acronym for Pacification Automaton X. Almost feels like they had the acronym first and worked their way backwards from there, like some kind of hack. So, first boss time. What exactly is the plan here? Well, we have a few options, but they can be difficult to figure out exactly. First off, we need to wail on Pax's legs until we can break the armor off of its shins. Then we have two choices for how to knock Pax over to deal real damage. We can either lure out a ranged missile attack to fire back onto the boss itself, giving us an opportunity to deal some actual damage to the main body, or we can smack the legs while it attempts to stomp on us. Doing only the second option will even count as a hardcore kill, which would reward us with an upgraded version of the boss weapon. However, Pax is a little too eager to fire his missiles, and he knocks himself over whether we want him to or not. Granted, the real difficulty here is in dodging these super slow attacks from Pax's main weapon while wailing on his legs. Once you figure out where to safely stand, it's pretty simple to dodge, but the Surge's wonky hitboxes do still make this difficult. So this does take a few tries, and it goes a little longer because we need to cycle into damage phase multiple times since our weapon is so weak, even though we have upgraded it to Mark 1. But there's nothing really about the reclaimed piston specifically that really makes packs any more or less difficult than any other run. I wonder if that's going to be a theme. Okay, with packs done, it's time to head to Central Production B, where we find our drone. This guy actually has the ability to trivialize some of the harder fights towards the end of the game, but I don't see this little guy being called the reclaimed piston. So, we can't use it. But I'll show one of those cheese methods off when we get there, right at the end. That being said, we'll be avoiding the triangle button at every corner until we arrive to a door. Now, while this isn't quite the same as Dark Souls, where the game really starts after the first mini-tutorial dungeon, hitting Central Production B is pretty similar to finally reaching Firelink Shrine for the first time. We're pretty well within the main thrust of the game, with the first few upgrades on our weapon and armor and everything. Anyway, the major beats here in Central Production B involves killing a security guard in order to give Irina one of their polearms. Normally, this is a pretty big sacrifice because the security baton is a fantastic weapon, but it's worth it, since she kills one of the 2 smelters in this area. Then we can kill the other and we're up to 3 shining coins. Aside from this, we're mostly running through areas and past enemies until we finally rush past the toxic area and find our next boss, the Firebug. This is an interesting fight, and the reclaimed piston meshes pretty well with the major gimmick of it, dealing low enough damage to the boss's overall health to give me plenty of opportunity to wail on the legs and break them each. Sometimes with stronger weapons, like the PAX version 2.0 that we would have gotten for doing the hardcore kill on PAX, we can kill the boss before breaking each leg. This means that with our terrible weapon, we can actually get the hardcore kill pretty easily this time. After a handful of resets, that is. Neat. And yeah, now I at least get to prove the hardcore reward with the Firebug Throttle version 2.0. Don't expect any more hardcore kills after this point, because it really doesn't matter. All we get is an upgraded weapon, which we can't use, and at least one remaining one is way too hard to even attempt, especially with the low damage on the reclaimed piston. More on that later, though. For now, we take a bit of a detour that I've never done in this game before, towards the DLC. I got most of my fill with this game back on release, before the DLC even dropped, and the last time I gave either new editions any time, it was only for the trip into Creo World, a Disney World clone with a Creo Corporation theme. That one is actually a pretty fun time with a few new bosses and some sick new weapons and armor that make the dive into the location totally worth the effort. However, we won't be visiting there today, as I kinda forgot to go check it out. Instead, we went for the Wild West themed DLC pack, the good, the bad, and the augmented. This one is a bit more akin to a roguelike mode, with these little pathways filled with enemies, obstacles, and unique mechanics for making it through to the end. While we're here, we take on some of the bosses, but these mostly amount to dude with a powerful new weapon and armor set. Which is why we won't be going through all 15 maps during this playthrough. Honestly, the few I did was plenty to get the idea, and I would rather return here with a weapon I actually enjoy, rather than trying to rough it with the reclaimed piston for my first attempt at some of the deeper levels of this DLC. Still, I can go over the first location and its boss. This map involves heading through 2 key areas and then getting a boss fight at the end. The first area is on top of a set of train tracks with an ethereal train passing through to deal damage to anyone who is directly in its path. Meaning it will crush Warren under 1,000 tons of ghostly steel, but we can also use it to smack up our enemies with some careful positioning. The way forward is generally to kill each enemy at the various gaps of the bridge in order to open the path to move on to the next section. However, this part can be run through pretty easily by simply jumping over the gap and moving on without fighting anything. The second area is a sun-baked set piece that looks like the Wild Frontier, and sitting in the sunlight for too long will start to burn whoever is stuck out in it and drain their health. Again, this can mean the player or enemies. There is no fast way through here though. For the finale, we get a boss man in a metal wolf costume, and now I believe folks might understand why we're here. I'm gonna need that man's head. So we target his armor, wear him down until we can get the dismemberment, and strip him for parts. And in the end, we get a DevBox classic, wearing not simply any animal head for a hot minute, but we get to be a bona fide howler. Until we replace this getup with the objectively best armor set in the entire game. Won't be too long, so let's get there. Next up, we get to head out to resolve BioLabs. No boss fight here, but there is a smelter. We'll technically come back here before the next boss fight, but after moving through the next area. So I'll show the fight now, since the basic strat can be done as soon as you get here. We need to equip as many healing injectables as possible, armor that is resistant to the sludge he's currently sifting through, which can be found by farming the enemies here for their armor, and wait for the cold spray attack for him to open up his chassis for big damage. Also, stay super close and that big arm will never attack. All you have to do is back away when he's ready to slam his body into the ground. As for the rest of Resolve BioLabs, it's a trudge through an enemy-infested dungeon, chopping body parts off left and right as we move towards getting a quick lore dump and an upgrade for our drone that lets us advance to a future area. This is also one of the first areas where we can't really run past most enemies anymore. Like, some of them we can still shimmy around, but for the most part, they'll be holding their position so strong in these tight corridors that we kinda need to fight them. With all of that done, we head back to Central Production B, where we find the final smelter and our 5th shining coin. This gives us access to the best armor in the game, the Iron Mouse armor, which comes as a complete set and can't be intermixed with other gear, but also has the defense rating of medium-sized Sentinel armor, similar to the wolf head that we were wearing before, and has no core power cost to wear, which means we can buff the absolute shit out of our build with tons of health injectables and some energy and damage boosts. With that done though, we can finally get to the next boss, Big Sister. This is another one where we can't do the hardcore kill, which normally means getting to the second phase of the fight and immediately fighting the main head. But the camera doesn't really like doing the hardcore kill, as it makes it extremely hard to see and target the main boss, while the side arms are still intact. Other than that though, we dodge and wait for the arms to come after us and counter them when they miss in the first phase. Once those are down, we take out each of the extra little torch arms, then take on the main body of the boss. This final section is also split into 2 parts, as we can deal some damage by slamming the body for a bit, but the last few hits have to be against the main head. Lining up attacks here can be tough, but I channel the patience elemental who inspired this run in the first place, and we accept that we're simply not allowed to be aggressive here. Not my favorite boss design, but we deal and move on to the R&D department. This location is similar to the BioLabs. There's no actual boss here, but we do need to deal with some tough areas and fights. About halfway through this area, we find some of my favorite enemies in this game, with the experimental mech dudes who revive after being killed and need to be taken down again. It's kind of like the skeletons in Dark Souls' Catacombs, but more like the DS3 ones that only revive once. Although one thing that makes the Surge's reviving enemies unique is that their second attempt to kill you changes based on how you killed them the first time. Either coming back in full form if you killed them normally, having limited combat if you cut off their weapon arm, or crawling around on the ground if you cut off their legs. We kill some more guys, grinding their body parts to upgrade our equipment, and eventually we find ourselves talking to the current head of R&D, needing to fight his most powerful experiment so far to get to him. We should probably kill him too and stop his mechanical evolution of humanity manifesto, but we move on. I'm sure something will happen to him later. Then we can head off to security, again to get a key for further progression. This area is basically a straight shot to the next boss, the Black Cerberus. So now we get to fight the head of security and probably the most difficult boss in this run. Not sure, it's a bit of a tie between him and the one coming up after, but I'm leaning towards this guy actually. But this is certainly the most tedious, because once we've dealt enough damage to the Black Cerberus, he runs away and summons up Pax to fight us. As in, the first boss we fought back in the beginning of the run. This Pax we actually have to fight the hardcore way, as he doesn't launch missiles. But he does shoot a big gun at us, and we need to make good use of that. We need to lure out his attacks to make sure that he shoots the big tanks behind us. Because if this doesn't happen, then once this Pax dies, another one will spawn. And another. Basically forever. With brief moments to fight the main boss between, but never actually getting to kill him. Then there is the big man himself, who can one-shot me, even though my armor is fully leveled to the current material drops in this area, and I have some extra health implants. And one of those one-shots comes as a follow-up to a combo that appears punishable. Interestingly though, the problems here have nothing to do with our weapon. Like, we're wearing really good armor with a very tanky vitality build, and he still instantly kills us. That's simply a matter of how tough this boss normally is. The weapon only makes the fight last a little longer, but the resets make the fight last for several hours. Several excruciating hours. Really makes me question if this game ever deserved my thoughts as the best Souls-like, even at the time it launched. Still, we persevere, learn the combos that can be punished, the ones that can't, and we get the win. Next up is the Executive Forum, another loop leading to a lore dump. This section is a war of attrition, and the real difficult encounter is this group of dudes at the very end. Most other enemies can be run right past without much effort. These guys instead need to be pulled one at a time and carefully fought in the tight space where you can remain at a distance from the others. But once we're through and our AI girlfriend dies, we can head to the final area and get ready to end this. Our final location is the Nucleus. Holy shit, we got through Executive Forums in one paragraph. This area is a bit of a maze, but I really love the design. Unlocking shortcuts by actually moving the med station up each floor is an awesome idea. I'd love to see more Souls-likes mess around with a mobile bonfire like this. It's such a good idea and doesn't deserve to be lost at the end of the surge, where only like 6 people and an owl have managed to power through long enough to reach. This deserves to be seen by more people. Oh hey, like you! Cool. I also really like the idea of these enemies that have armor that moves from one location to another, depending on where you target and hit it. Meaning that you get a choice of swapping to unarmored locations for an easier kill, or focusing a single limb to farm specific materials. Or its powerful weapons. It's also worth noting that all of the weapon drops in this area are pretty good and sick looking. Not that it matters for this run. But as much as I like some of the stuff here, we keep running into the getting one-shot by everything problem. I really don't know what's so terrible about my build right now, but I cannot survive against anything. Like, I thought I had a moderate amount of health upgrades, but clearly more are necessary to actually survive this place. Anyway, while we're here, we interact with this random terminal to unlock the good ending, and head out to fight the final boss, the Rogue Process. At this point, I had to completely rework my build in order to survive the fight. And I ran into the worst bug on the entire run right here when activating this overcharge node.
Hey, you're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right?
As for the boss, I gave it a solid few hours, attempting it with my moderate health and healing implants that I was trying to use as a middle-of-the-road type of build. But in this case, we need to go completely dump every single level we have into health. I'll also note that I'm a little low on levels at this point. Like, you can likely be at rig level 80 once you reach the final boss. In fact, some of the upgrades to get your armor to max level requires you to be. And I'm only in my mid-50s. That is before dumping all of my stocked tech into levels and jumping up into the 60s and doubling my overall health. So then we can get back in here and actually get past the first phase with even the slightest bit of confidence. Oh, and yes, the big version is only the first phase. We should check that out in more detail actually, because like most of the other larger bosses, this is a bit of a puzzle. The trick here is to target each of its limbs, left, right, and back, and beat them each down until they glow red. Then move on to the next one. Once one limb is broken, it won't take any further damage. Also, you're only really going to get in one good hit, then back away. Don't really try to get too many combos in, even with a faster weapon, otherwise he'll catch you and rip you apart pretty much every time. Now for phase 2, this is basically a dude using a one-handed weapon, kind of like our own reclaimed Piston. However, he does have a few things that sets him apart from regular dude with weapon enemies. For one, his combos often end with a shower of nanobots that will chip you down as he continues to combo you, if you don't dodge the correct way. Always go left or right, never dodge backwards against this guy. Running away also works. As for actually fighting him, we could use the drone to infinitely drop his ass onto the ground, essentially skipping this phase if we can keep the rhythm going, but I'm not allowed to use the drone. Instead, we'll repeat our strategy from the Black Cerberus fight. Hit and run, over and over, until the dismember prompt appears and ends the fight quick. And we're finally done. To be honest, this run wasn't really anything special. Definitely a decent baby's first surge challenge, since it does have low enough damage to not be able to completely negate the need for strategy against most enemies. That being said, I really can't suggest it if you're looking to push your The Surge experience further in some way. If you really want to get crazy, then go for a rig level 1 or no injections run. But that would probably lead to every single enemy instant killing you with a stern look. So I don't know if I have the patience for it. Still, now that the video finally exists, I might have a better idea for a challenge for any sour fruit, submerged or otherwise, looking to see what the series can do when using a low damage weapon. Try out an HL1 defibrillators only run in The Surge 2. It's the better game, and the twin-rigged weapons is much more entertaining. Of course, that's coming from the claw guy, so naturally, I'm gonna like them. Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video, where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon, link in the description, and make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to new content and their names written in the credits at the end of videos. And those who pledge in the top tiers get their names read out. Like our DevBox designers, Genghis Braun, and our DevBox developers, Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.